c4, c5, g3, g6, bishop g2, bishop g7, knight c3, knight c6, rook b1, e6, a3, knight e7, b4, d6, knight f3, castle kingside, castle kingside, b6, e3, bishop b7, queen b3, queen d7, bishop b2, knight e5, knight takes e5, bishop takes e5, bishop takes b7, queen takes b7, d3, knight c6, b5, knight a5, queen a2, rook a d8, knight e4, f5, knight g5, queen e7, bishop takes e5, d takes e5, knight f3, queen f6, queen c2, rook d6, queen c3, e4, queen takes f6, rook takes f6, d takes e4, rook f8, rook fc1, h6, e takes f5, e takes f5, king f1, rook fd8, king e2, king g7, rook c2, g5, h4, g4, knight e1, king f7, a4, rook 8d7, knight g2, rook d3, rook a1, rook b3, knight f4, rook b4, knight d3, king e6, knight takes b4, c takes b4, rook d1, rook c7, rook d4, knight b3, rook d5, knight c5, rook cd2, knight e4, rook to d4, b3, king d3, knight takes f2, check, king c3, knight e4, check, king takes b3, knight takes g3, rook d6, check, king e5, rook takes h6, rook e7, h5, knight f1, rook d5, check, king e4, rook d6, king e5, rook hg6, knight takes e3, h6, g3, rook d3, king f4, rook g7, g2, rook d2, rook e6, rook f2, check, king e4, rook f takes g2, knight takes g2, rook takes g2, rook takes h6, rook g7, f4, rook takes a7, rook f6, king c3, f3, rook e7, check, king f4, rook e1, f2, rook f1, king e3, c5, b takes c5, a5, rook f4, rook a1, rook a4, rook h1, rook b4, rook a1, rook takes b5, a6, rook b8, king c4, rook a8, king b5, c4, rook b1,